let's try this again. Hopefully it won't stop this time. I've seen videos pause, but I've never seen them stopped. So let's try this again. So one of my clients yesterday made a comment, or today made a comment in passing about commitment and why is it so hard? Why is commitment so hard? And this came up because we were talking about Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles, and his amazing chapter on commitment. And I'm not going to say it this time in case this is why my video stopped, but the name of the chapter is 99% is a, insert the word for female dog that starts with a B, semicolon, 100% is a breeze, or something like that. And the point of that chapter is that many of us don't fully commit. We don't fully go all in. So we leave this little bit of wiggle room where we're still wondering if it's the right thing to do, or if we want to do something different. So this is, if you didn't read the article I wrote a couple years ago about quitting smoking, this chapter in Jack Canfield's book is actually what helped me quit smoking for good, because I realized I was using a ridiculous amount of energy on a daily basis debating whether or not I should smoke when I'd said that I had quit, right? So if you're, so what happened for me is I read this chapter, realized, oh my gosh, I'm leaving the question open. I've said that I've quit, but I still have a question mark. I've quit? Not I've quit. So I realized I had all this energy still going, and I was not being present in the moment. I was going out with friends and looking around to bum cigarettes. Like I wasn't committed to what I had said that I was committed to. And so I read this chapter, realized that was happening. I thought, what a ridiculous waste of energy. Yogis and strategists have one thing in common. We do not like to waste energy. So as soon as I saw it, done, not wasting energy on that one. But many of us do this in one form or another, right? You commit to a diet, you commit to an exercise regime, you commit to writing every day or blogging every day or whatever it is, commit to showing up in a new way in your business, and then we wobble. We wobble, we waffle, we wonder, we kind of go, I don't know if this is the right thing. And my client said, why is commitment so hard? Just in passing, like, oh, commitment's so hard. And here's what I think about commitment. And I take this to a yogic place. Whoops. Hey, Melissa. So I take this to a yogic place, which is one of the reasons commitment and follow through are so hard is because our allegiance is in the wrong place, or wrong place, right? Our allegiance is somewhere. So no amount of wanting to do something else can really help us or get us there if our allegiance is still somewhere else. And this is why you may have worked with coaches, or you may have had the experience of working with clients, or you may have been, you may just know this about yourself from your own self-awareness, that you can say and do all the right things and still not see a change. And it's because your allegiance is to a different vision. And I have this with clients all the time. They'll come to me, yoga, let's talk about yoga clients. They'll come to class over and over and over, and they'll tell me they want this, they want this, they want this. But then every time we do something that's going to help that, they're doing it in a way that's not what I'm suggesting. And that's because their allegiance is not to what they say they want. Their allegiance is to where they are. And it's the same thing. I've done it. We all do it. So say we want to have, we want to feel really vibrant and healthy. And we're like, that would be great. And to me, being vibrant and healthy, in my head, I'm going to shortcut that to like losing 20 pounds and eating a bunch of smoothies and whatever. And so we say like, oh, I want to lose weight and be healthy. I want to lose weight and I'm going to drink smoothies. But what that's doing is keeping the allegiance where we are. It's keeping the allegiance at I'm overweight and unhealthy, and not switching the allegiance to I'm vibrantly alive. I feel healthy. Right? So then even though we try to do things like, oh, well, why didn't I have a smoothie every day? Why didn't I lose any weight? Why didn't I start exercising? It's because we're still in allegiance to the previous version of ourselves. We haven't switched our mental image. So when a commitment is hard, it's because the allegiance is off. And this is really what powerful and successful people have figured out. They know how to visualize their way into feeling and being successful, whatever that means for you. It could be raising healthy children, or it could be a multi-million-dollar business. That part doesn't matter. The part that matters is that you know how to move your allegiance to what you want instead of where you are or what you don't want. And I see this a lot with people who are unhappy in their jobs. And I say, okay, well, what do you want in a job? Well, I don't want a bad boss. Who does? Like, well, I don't want to be stressed. I don't want bad hours. I don't want to have to travel a lot. It's like, great, but tell me what you do want. Because we have to be in allegiance with what you do want in order to be able to get there. Now, that's a little bit of muddying the waters between getting really clear on what you want and having allegiance to what you want, but we have to put the picture together in order to be able to figure it out. So if you're finding that commitment is hard, check where your allegiance is. You know, is your allegiance to seeing yourself how you see yourself? Like, is your allegiance to seeing yourself as somebody who's unstructured, somebody who's procrastinator, as somebody who sleeps in or is lazy, or oh, I'm just, you know, I'm a cake person, or I just can't resist ice cream. You know, if your allegiance is to that vision of yourself, then you're right, you're never going to stop eating cake or ice cream. You know, but if your allegiance is to your vision of yourself as somebody who is really in tune with their body and makes decisions based on what feels good, then guess what? You're not going to care if ice cream and cookies come around and it doesn't hit what's going to make you feel good right then. So I'm not trying to say that commitment in this sense means all or nothing. I'm saying commitment takes you to a different way of being with yourself that allows you to make decisions in a different way. Let that sink in. So it allows you to make decisions from a different perspective. So let me give you another yoga example because it's easy to visualize. So I see a lot of people who, you know, I can see where their allegiance is because I focus on the length and the strength of the spine. So let the spine be long. If we bend the spine, if we collapse the spine, if we're like this, we're not breathing very well, we're not moving very well, our nerves aren't able to have the, you know, the space that they need. And we're just not really doing yoga. We're creating a shape, but we're not doing yoga because there's no breathing, there's no movement, there's no energy flowing through it. And so we'll create a pose like triangle pose. Maybe I'll just show you actually. Can you see me? So a lot of people come into triangle pose and they've got dead straight legs, but their arms are like this, their body's like this. You know, but they've got dead straight legs because on the cover of Yoga Journal, triangle pose has dead straight legs and your fingers all the way to the floor. Your hands are reaching all the way to the floor in this big triangle, right? And so people come in and they have these beautifully straight legs and their hands touching the floor and they're like, look at me, I'm so beautiful, I look just like the cover of Yoga Journal. And I laugh, I'm not externally, though sometimes, and say, where is your allegiance? Your allegiance is to what you think the pose is supposed to look like, not how it feels for your body. And yoga is about being healthy for you, moving your body, lengthening your spine, being able to breathe. So I'd rather we end up in a triangle pose that's here with this nice long spine that's able to open and extend than straight legs touching the floor and totally slumped over. So that's just a silly example to help you see what I mean. Because so often our allegiance is to something other than ourselves, right? So it could be if you run a business, your allegiance might be to what you think you need to do to succeed. Meaning you have a model in your head of somebody who's successful and you're just copying what you think they do or what you've been told to do by your own team or your own mentors and supporters. If you're in like a more traditional 9-to-5 or a corporate world, perhaps your allegiance is to what you think your boss wants or to what you think the company culture requires of you. So you may make decisions based on that, which isn't a bad thing all the time, but when we wonder about like, well, why can't I force myself to be more productive? Why can't I force myself to get stuff done every day? Why can't I do more? Why can't I be more like this or more like that? And we feel that pain of like, I wish I was like this, but I'm actually like that. That's an allegiance issue. Because even though you want to be like something, you're like, yeah, but that's not me. You know? I have a thing in my head that's like, you're a messy person. And I kid you not, no matter how hard I try to be clean, it ends up like being a disaster. There are like papers on the floor, right? And I'm working on that allegiance because I have to keep telling myself, what if I'm not? What if I'm not? What if I'm not? What if I'm something different? So what would be the new allegiance? Instead of thinking I'm a disorganized mess, which is what I've told myself for decades, because I've been one since I can remember, what would be the new allegiance? The new allegiance would be something like, I feel inspired by my environment. It could be as simple as that. That sounds like an affirmation, and it doesn't have to be phrased that way, but we got to get the mental image and feeling of being a different way and hold on to that feeling and way of being. Let's see, Natalie says, love that. There's so much prescription on how things should be done and when it isn't aligned to how you work best as an individual. Exactly. Exactly. So many of us, we force ourselves to do things and then they don't work or we don't follow through. And then we beat ourselves up because we failed, but we didn't fail. It's just our allegiance is to something else, right? So if you really want the outcome, if you really want that thing, then switch your allegiance. But if you don't beat yourself up for failing because it's just not who you've decided I love the word allegiance. It's not where you've decided your allegiance lies. You know? So this concept of allegiance I view as one of the most fundamental concepts of the work that I do. Because, I work with people for years on end. Because we can come up with your soul's calling and your soul's truth in a heartbeat, right there, right? 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It's not hard because it's on the surface. It's always on the surface if you know what to look for. But living your truth is a much more complicated endeavor because of this issue of allegiance. And I view the work that I do as basically like chipping away at false allegiances, at things that you don't actually want to be allied to or with, and pointing you back to yourself, self-allegiance, 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 and building that ability to be in allegiance with the self. And then it's not necessarily an aspect, the question is no longer about commitment, right? Because once we're in allegiance, it doesn't feel like hard work. It doesn't feel like commitment to follow through. It feels like the natural and obvious choice. So I frequently switch in and out of drinking caffeine and in and out of drinking alcohol. And there are periods of years where I've had no coffee or alcohol, and there's periods of years where I have. And, I go in and out of them. And one of the easiest ways for me to switch back into how I want to feel, which is not having those chemical substances running through my system because they throw me for a loop, no judging if they don't do it to you, but they do it to me, is to look at allegiance. Because if I try to do it from like, well, I really shouldn't, it doesn't make me feel good, then I want them because they're a sneaky treat. Like, I want the sneaky treat. It makes me feel good. I'm like, ooh, look at me, I'm treating myself. But as soon as I switch my allegiance to how I want to feel and who I want to be instead, it's not even a question. I don't even crave it. It could be sitting here right now in front of me and I just wouldn't care. And what that also does is when you are fully in alignment with your allegiance, you don't care about these little slip-ups, Like, say that I made a decision that in my vision of myself, I don't drink, and say, like, I have a beer. I no longer, like, beat myself up for that because the aligned me, the me in allegiance, like, it's an aberration. It doesn't matter. It no longer is a commentary on who I am as a person and whether or not I'm mentally and emotionally strong enough to resist things. Like, it's life, it rolls by, it goes on. So this allegiance question is a big, big deal. And that's the same thing like when you come into allegiance with your purpose and you start living your own truth. And then when you have little hiccups of like, oh shoot, I just, totally sold myself out and did this thing, or I threw myself under the bus at my kid's school and volunteered for everything, where we have these moments of slip-ups, we're not beating ourselves up over it because the who we are as the self is no longer swinging between self and other. We're aligned with self, and we just have these aberrations as a way to come back. Like, oh, there it is. I see what I did. Come back. But they're not catastrophic, and they're not taking up our energy, making us wonder, are we this or are we that? Are we this or are we that? So I hope that makes some sense. So for you, I'd love, one of the most interesting questions I think that we can ask is, where is your allegiance? Like, what is your allegiance to? And do it for everything in your life. Like with your body, where's your allegiance? Is it to Globe? That's a combination of Glamour and Vogue. Is it to what magazines in your culture say that is attractive? Is your allegiance to how you feel? Is your allegiance to how you think you should feel because you're a spiritual person and they've told you you're a liberated man or woman, and liberated men or women have this view. Like really, really, like look at it. What is your allegiance to? Do it for free time. Is your allegiance to like, oh, I should be taking baths because that's what self-care and self-loving women do? Or is your allegiance to like free time? I don't have free time. I'm super mom. And moms aren't allowed to take a break because that's like the cross we bear. Or teachers, who are constantly working. Like, look at these really subtle allegiances in your life, and you might call them something else. You might call them like the shoulds, or what's another way they might show up? Like influences, maybe, or stereotypes. But I like the word allegiances because in the concept of allegiance, there is the concept of choice. And should is very, like, there's no negotiation with a should, right? Like, all right, that's your opinion. But allegiance gives us the opportunity to change and gives us the opportunity to choose where it goes. So I really like the concept. And it also shows us where we might have like, what's the word? I'm losing my words. Secret is not the word I'm looking for, but like secret allegiances, meaning we've accidentally chosen something by default. Like maybe we just grew up with somebody else's allegiance in our head. So maybe, trying to think of an example. Like maybe you picked up your body image from flashcards. You picked up your body image from your mom or your dad or your sister or your neighbor or a teacher or something like that. So we may be carrying other people's allegiances just by default, and so they're acting out not necessarily in secret, but the word I'm looking for, which is like they're, I guess, by default, subconsciously, for lack of a better word. I use flashcards for me to learn vocabulary because I really clearly need to. So hopefully that is really helpful. Inherited or ingrained. Yeah, thank you. Perfect. You guys are so helpful. Who knew that you would get the opportunity to teach English today? Thank you. But hopefully this is really striking a chord for you, because this really is the meat of the issue, is that most of us think the meat of the issue or the heart of the issue is that we have this aha moment where everything becomes clear. And like, that's great. Like, that's great. It can happen to anybody at any time. In fact, most of us have little ones all the time. But the real interesting part of this journey is learning how to stay in those aha moments, right? And learning how to keep up that expanded space and keep up that like, whoa, I feel awesome. My mind is expanded. My heart's expanded. I feel so empowered and energized. Like that's a space that we snap out of, right? Or we slowly roll out of. So this allegiance question is one of the guiding paths that I use to keep going towards that. I so live for my purpose as an allegiance. Oh, thank you, Melissa. You do. You're a freaking rock star. You're a total rock star, Melissa. And like, this is a woman, if you don't know Melissa, follow her, because she's daily talking about this stuff. Now, not everybody's purpose is to show up and talk about this stuff as directly. And so, come on, English, as directly and like in these words as Melissa and I do, but she's one of them. And I just absolutely love everything that you share and the model that you are, and the thousands of women and men who follow you because of this work that you do on allegiance with yourself and the choices that you make and how vulnerably and boldly you share that process of choosing yourself over and over and over. It's absolutely inspiring. So if you don't follow Melissa, you don't know Melissa, friend her right now. Follow her. Absolutely amazing. But this is what we're talking about. Like, it's a daily choice. And it's a journey to get there. And this question of allegiance you can use as a light along your path to help you continually move towards feeling how you want to feel. Because these questions of allegiance will come up over and over and over in more and more subtle ways. Not because you haven't chosen, but because you get to choose in new ways and choose in more nuanced ways. You write out my values and goals through my allegiances every morning. Nice. Values and goals through, yeah, exactly. So you can take allegiance and make it into all these things. You can capture your allegiances in your values. You can capture your allegiances in your goals. But the allegiance is this, like, yeah, I wasn't gonna make fun of you for using right and right because I'm gonna mess it up. But I did appreciate you making the mistake for me. So you can capture your allegiances in all of these different ways, but the allegiance itself is the vision in your head. Right? It's the default that you're running. And that's what we want to become really mindful of and really aware of, because the default is what makes it seem like we're bad at commitment. And the default is what makes it seem like we never follow through on things. It's not that, we're just going back to default. So if we want to feel like we follow through, we've got to switch the default to a different vision. And that's the allegiance question. Awesome. I hope this was helpful. I love your suggestions about putting them in values and goals. I love how you guys explained them. You are amazing. And yeah. If you want to share allegiances, like I have a Facebook group if you want to come over there and talk about it, and talk about what your allegiances are and explore it in a bit more depth. I think you can link to it from my business page. It's called The Free and the Brave, because this path is for people who want to be free, inner freedom in particular, but man, you got to be brave to go there, right? It's a courageous path to do this kind of work. And if you're interested in this like deep work of getting clear on your purpose and then that process of being in allegiance with it, I'm about to launch my mastermind. Please, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. It's literally like this close to clicking publish on. And I would love to talk more about whether or not that's a good fit for you. It's not for everybody at every time, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. It's a heck of a lot of fun. And Melissa is living proof of the awesomeness of that process. So hopefully this is helpful, and we'll talk to you soon. Mwah!